All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, I pray you and your families are well. Such an honor to be with you all. Thank you so much for giving out of your precious time to be with us in this journey of understanding the concept of Futuwwah and how we can implement it in our contemporary era by the guidance of our teacher, Imam Dawud Walid, and his pioneering work. So Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Today we're going to read the chapter about the difference towards scholars and spiritual mentors, inshallah. So let me start sharing my screen, dear brothers and sisters, and then we'll start. Just 1 second, brothers and sisters. All right. Do you guys see my screen? Is it seen? Could somebody just say if it's seen, then I can start. I don't have access to the
Yes.
chat.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much. All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let's start then. So today we were supposed to read the chapter, Deference Towards Scholars and Spiritual Mentors, the shuyukh, the murabbis, the irshad, the murshid. There's very much different names when it comes to speaking about the spiritual guide, a spiritual mentor. So ustad, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. So this is the chapter for today. So anybody who would like to volunteer, starting to read, please go ahead. Just raise your digital hands and I'll ask you guys to unmute yourselves, inshallah. All right, let's start with Sister Arinola. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
We're reading difference towards scholars and spiritual mentors. Just as the fatwa is to fulfill the rights of his parents and elders among his close kin, he has a duty to show deference and respect towards scholars and his spiritual mentors or guides. Once such a guide has become apparent to him, this is especially needed today when religious authority is not only being minimized in general in the West, but also is being actively subverted, knowingly and unknowingly, by many Muslims themselves. This ranges from so-called reformists who claim that they can perform their own reinterpretations on issues about which there has been a sweeping consensus by scholars, to those who think that they can study books of hadiths on their own and start giving their own religious decrees. This environment has led to the open disrespect of traditional scholars, forcing many young Muslims to question the need for scholars or the conviction that young males need to humble themselves before spiritual mentors.
Jazakallah khairan, sister. Thank you so much for reading in an excellent way. So this is a very important aspect of what Imam Dawud Walid is referring to here, right? For instance, what has happened to the respect and the acknowledgement of traditional sources to traditional knowledge, and the consensus, the ijma, in many points regarding the conduct of the Muslim, the way that we as Muslims should live. There has been an ijma that we have been following for generations and generations, a consensus established by our scholars. What has happened to this? This is a very interesting thing. And what Imam Dawud Walid says here is that today, the respect towards religious authority, and I would say it's not only in the West, but all over the world, has decreased in many ways due to many different reasons. It could be the anthropocentric era that we live in today, where it's more, I am the one who knows, I am the one who is knowledgeable, rather than respecting authority. But it could also be, as Imam Dawud Walid points out, that there is a lot of reformist movements within the Ummah today who wants us to disconnect ourselves from the chain of knowledge, from the sacred chain of knowledge. And also, I think this is affecting the youth today. And I am not against watching YouTube videos to learn. Obviously, YouTube could be a great source for knowledge or any other social media platform. But without proper guidance and mentorship, then you do not know where does this knowledge source come from, you know. So you might be misguided as well if you don't have the proper infrastructure surrounding you. So it's a very important thing. And I would like you guys to come with some of your reflections. What is the challenges of the reformists and the reformist agenda of reforming Islam and our sacred aspects of our religion, which is to preserve the tradition, preserve the Sunnah, but in this case is also to really acknowledge the authority of our scholars that are trained in, in Islamic centers that are acknowledged by the majority as places where you can receive sacred knowledge, for instance. How can we counteract the reformist movement of even liberalizing the sacred hierarchies that we believe in, or the aspect of respect and acknowledgement of scholars being the inheritors of the prophets, for instance. So I would like to have your reflections with regards to this. Anybody who would like to share? We can speak a little bit about the whole reformist agenda. We can speak a little bit about also the importance of studying with people that are guided with proper religious decrees, etc. Any reflections? Yes, Sister Amina, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. This is a related reflection I had in a different Quran study circle as well. But I think one of the things that's happening in today's age is people following their own desires. And when it comes to deciding between the fuqaha, especially as well, the four imams, it's like you pick and choose. For instance, take Tim Tam in Australia. It's like according to Hanafi fiqh, it's not permissible to eat. But then if you want to make it permissible for yourself, you go to Shafi fiqh and you're like, oh, it's permissible to eat. But in picking and choosing between the madhahib and I think I might be digressing from the subject as well, but this is just a reflection that I had, that in picking and choosing between the madhahib and in between scholars, or even just deciding for yourself, I think what's actually happening is us following our own desires. And yeah, that's it. I think that's it. Yeah.
Jazakallah khairan, Sister Amina. I appreciate your inputs. You said something very interesting, which is following your own desires. And that's something that could happen if we don't have proper guidance, isn't it? And I think this chapter essentially is about how the fata, or how us, as males and females, as men and women, need to not follow our desires, right? Which you mentioned, Amina, Sister Amina, by, for instance, asking for help and support from proper guides, whether it's how we should, as you say, follow the fiqh of certain things. And obviously, as Ahl al-Sunnah wa Jama'ah, we have four madahibs that we can all adhere to, and the importance of being grounded in one madhab, for instance, and also to get guidance in how, you should choose different positions when you're traveling, based upon your madhab, for instance. I think that the general lay person maybe are not on a level of knowledge where they can just pick and choose whatever. That's why it's always been recommended to follow a madhab. And often you follow the madhab of your country. But then obviously, if you study with a teacher, you want to follow him as a guide, maybe you can change your madhab to his madhab. So essentially, this is very important that no matter what, we don't follow our nafs, because as lay persons, we might not have the proper level of knowledge to do ijtihad, for instance. So yeah, it's a very important reflection you did, sister, and I appreciate that a lot. It reminds me a little bit about of the importance of understanding that you're not submitting towards your teacher or spiritual mentor. You're essentially submitting towards Allah, and this person is a guide that helps you to come closer to Allah. So it's not through him, because this is also some conception of having a teacher or having a spiritual mentor, that it's been depicted as that you're submitting towards that person, but it's actually to submit towards Allah, acknowledging that that person has sacred knowledge that you can benefit from to come closer to Allah, and that you need guidance in that. That is something that I think it's worth reflecting upon. Yes, Sister Amina, you wanted to say something more?
Yes, exactly. I agree with the last point, and then the ayah from Surah Fatiha comes to mind, where it says, "Ihdina siratal mustaqim, siratal ladina an'amta alayhim," that on the path of people Allah has bestowed mercy, favor upon. Then when we find mentors and guides and teachers, and also just trusting traditional scholars, not only did they have more knowledge than us, their intellect was purer, because they weren't as affected by the trials of today and the sins and everything. And then their level of taqwa as well, which added to their ijtihad and which added to their sincerity as well, ikhlas. But that ayah comes to mind. And when we ask Allah to put us on the path of people He has bestowed favor upon, then we should humble ourselves, and we should be okay with, seeing those people when we come across them, or when we cross paths with them. And I think, yeah, just that bit, the ayah came to mind. That's
awesome. Thank you for sharing that beautiful ayah, Sister Amina. And I agree with you. I think that showing deep deference and love and appreciation to your teacher, to your mentor, to your guide is crucial as a way to break your nafs. It's a way to tell yourself, I'm not more knowledgeable, and that this is a person who's invested his whole life in studying for the sake of Allah, understanding the deen of Allah, understanding the aspects of Allah's creation that Allah has allowed us to understand through His book and through the messages that came through the different prophets, and ultimately towards the seal of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So understanding the Sunnah of the Prophet, for instance, they have invested their time, and then many of the traditional scholars come from a tradition of inheriting the knowledge from their teachers, from their mentors. So it's been passed on from generation to generation. And one of my teachers, I forgot what he said. I think it's 49 generation, if I'm not mistaken. He said something 49, 50 between the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and us today. So many of our traditional scholars, teachers, mentors, guides, they are directly linked to that chain, this 49 generation chain, or 50. Please forgive me, I might be not fully accurate in the way that I'm quoting my teacher. Nevertheless, it's almost like 50 generations. But you can, and 50 is a lot, but still it's close. And if you see that this scholar has, inherited knowledge from his predecessors, and they inherited from their predecessor, then it's almost that you're connecting back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that it's directly linked to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's why it's so important for us to preserve the chain of knowledge, right? The sanad, the silsila, it's important, right? As a way to have the direct connection that we're learning directly through the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the knowledge has been passed on from generation to generation. And then also to see, okay, where is the sacred places, the sacred spaces where you can learn sacred knowledge? There's a lot of great places in many parts of the world. And then you all understand that they are also connected to the sacred link in their process of disseminating knowledge and knowledge inquiry. So alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. This is very important indeed. Thank you, Sister Amina. Anybody else who has a reflection? Like, for instance, why are a lot of young Muslims questioning the needs of scholars and to humble themselves before people that are more knowledgeable? Why do you guys think that that's the case today? And I would say it's not only young people, by the way. Yes, Sister Zubaydah, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I think maybe it stems also from a space of not knowing. I often think when I was younger, how much you think you know to what you don't know. And then life, experience teaches you differently. So I think it's not always coming from a bad space, but also being socialized into the ideas of your opinion being valid, And I think that, I always think back, like let's say to the previous imams, from a very young age, they were put under teachers and mentors, whereas our practice isn't that today. And I think that's caused the disconnect between the youth seeing the value or understanding, or people in general seeing the value, because that's not what they've been normalized to. And until you really understand, or one really understands or learns about the rich history of Islam and how it was taught across the ages, one then appreciates, of doing things at certain spaces of development. And not that we can't go back, but I think it's now about really reinforcing, the value of having these mentors, and what the consequences of not having them are in your life. So yeah, I think that's just some reflection.
MashaAllah, Sister Zubaydah, thank you for your excellent inputs. I really appreciate it. Yes, indeed. I think for majority of people, as you say, rightfully so, this is not done intentionally. And also, as you're referring to, and for me to further reflect upon it, I think it's also a sign of our generation, of our era, which there is so much access to knowledge that we're kind of like, in a sense, not needing to travel to acquire knowledge. I mean, if you go back to reading the biographies of many of our, traditional scholars, if you read the biography of, Imam Ghazali, or if you read the biography of, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, or many other traditional scholars, they used to travel from their cities to Baghdad, or to Damascus, or to Cairo, or to Medina, or to Mecca, or, in different sacred spaces and places of their time, to learn, because knowledge was not as accessible. And there is pros and cons with knowledge being accessible the way that it is today, right? The pros are, in the sense that, alhamdulillah, like you can sit in front of your computer, you can have a book study circle like we're doing right now, this Futuwwah Study Circles, right? So we're brothers and sisters from all over the world learning together, right? The negatives could be that we don't know where does this knowledge come from, where is its source, for instance, and we don't need to almost to fight or to put up some heavy work and effort to access knowledge the way that our traditional scholars did. So it's good reflections to have. Jazakallah khairan, sister. Yes, Sister Hadid, go ahead. Please unmute yourself, sister.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Wa alaikum salam. We hear you, sister.
Yeah. So I was thinking that maybe the society that we are in nowadays, like it's more human-centric. Like it's always about the person and what he needs, and that's why we don't listen anymore to anybody who is more knowledgeable or like our scholars, I think.
Yeah, 100%, Sister Hadid. Thank you for your great input. I agree. And that's why I think this chapter is so important. I mean, all the chapters in this book is very crucial for us to understand Futuwwah and the embodiment of Futuwwah. But just to submitting yourself to somebody that is elderly than you, wiser than you, it's crucial as a way to purify yourself and also to break your nafs. Indeed. Thank you, Sister Hadid. Any other feedback or reflections, dear sisters and brothers?
There are a few comments in the chat, but
Are there comments in the chat? Okay, tamam. Thank you for reminding me, sister. Yes, we do. Jamaluddin Abdullah, maybe they haven't been introduced to the sacred tradition. Yes. And the weight of the Sanad. Yes, Brother Jamaluddin. Nice to find a fellow Jamaluddin brother. I hope you're fine. And in turn have grown within culture mass media. Yes, indeed, brother. Thank you for your great remarks. Sister Sophia is writing, one reason maybe is that in the age of internet, information is readily available. Yes, indeed, sister. Thank you for your great remarks. Sister Anam is writing, there is a relatively new distinction made between religion and spirituality that may be used to push this narrative of belittling scholars. The latter, spirituality, being promoted in general where there is no framework and no authority guide required and is something personal and sufficient. However, in our deen, the two are inseparable. We cannot have one without the other. This is such a crucial point, Sister Anna. Thank you. The whole aspect of privatizing religion and spirituality is one of the effects of secularization of society. That even in the secular society, they will say, okay, it's fine. According to the liberal, doctrine, it's fine. You can believe in whatever you want to believe, but it should be private. And then what happens? Then the disconnection with actually, learning from a guide, learning from a murabbi, learning from a sheikh disappears because it should be only private. Traditionally, all households had a guide. If you go back to the traditional societies, all households, they had at least a guide. One guide that gave them the spiritual guide. This was so common in all societies in the Muslim world. But because of the privatization of religiosity and spirituality, this has been severe damage, this ties. So Sister Anam, you're, mashallah, very accurate in that reflection. I appreciate it. Sister Sophia's writing, unfortunately, with availability of language learning models, the AI, it will get worse. Yes, sister, I would say depending on in which way. And feel free to unmute yourself, Sister Sophia, because mashallah, you're very knowledgeable and when it comes to pedagogy. I would say depending on what. I am for AI personally. Because as a counselor, when I work with some of my clients, let's say clients who have ADHD, I'm giving that as an example. AI could revolutionize their way of organizing things and filtering things. So that it depends on how you use technology, I would say. Technology is not the end. It's a mean to come to the end. It should never take over you trying to learn. It could help you to further learn, and strengthen your knowledge inquiry process. So it could be good depending on the way that you apply it. It's like a tool. It's like having a pen. A pen could be bad if you're writing bad things, but it could be good if you're writing good things. And a pen could be good if you're writing down the things that you're studying with your teacher. The same here. You can use AI. You study with your teacher, then you can summarize your notes, for instance. So I think there's pros and cons in digitalization personally. And I've seen both the negative aspect of making people perhaps more lazy, but I also seen the positive aspect of allowing people to further strengthen the knowledge inquiry that they still want to do in a traditional way. Yes, Sister Sophia, I would love to hear your feedback. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, brother, what you said, exactly the point that AI is a tool, and if it's not used wisely, and if people don't know how to use it, then it's very, very dangerous.
Yeah,
that is my point, that it's going to it can get worse. It has just like everything. I mean, you look at the television, you look at the phone chat, everything that is a tool has a danger of being misused. And in the age of AI, I mean, we're seeing all around us I'm not trying to paint a dystopian society, but it is, if it's not used properly, basically, it will get, scholars will be discussing this 50 years from now, saying, okay, looking back, how we could reform using the AI, perhaps. But as it's highly dangerous. But I mean, it's out there. You can't undo it. It's the job for us as educators is to just reach out to as many people as possible and say, look, don't look at it as something that is a very clever entity or compared to any sentient being. It is what it is. It is a tool, and let's use it. And yeah, we do use it, but just making people aware. I think that is perhaps our biggest task now. To make use of it as best as possible.
Jazakallah khairan for your excellent feedback and remarks, Sister Sophia. And I agree with you. I mean, it's like a double-edged sword in the sense that it could be good if it's used and utilized correctly, but we need to have the fiqh of AI, in all honesty. And there's a lot of scholars now that are trying to, reflect upon the fiqh of AI. And I think that's crucial And it's the next step of digital development. I mean, in a
I mean,
sense, in all generation, we have some paradigm shifts. I mean, when printing books came to place maybe 700 years ago,
yeah,
I'm sure they were also thinking like, wait a minute, we're now writing down knowledge and we can mass produce it. Okay, what is the pros and cons? Because
yes,
before then, people used to memorize things. And if we're quite honest, we are much less inclined to memorize things as modern men and women because we
yeah.
lost that ability because we can just read things and we can just record things and we don't need to memorize things. So there is always pros and cons and everything, but I think it's worth having a very transparent discussion about it. Definitely, sister. Thank you for raising it.
I mean, yesterday we had just a little extra.
Go ahead.
We had a workshop in Batley, a Dewsbury Batley, from a scholar in a mosque about teaching parents and mosque Mulanas how they could use ChatGPT as an advantage and show them as a tool. But I think we need to go further. One step is to create something that would actually show the students how to use ChatGPT, which perhaps it will come. I mean, I'm not saying it's not going to come, but the sooner we get onto it, but again, how many people are we going to reach? Whatever, I guess it's whatever the number. Even if we manage to help one person, it's still that one person we managed to help, I guess.
Yes, exactly, Sister Sophia. I think it's a very important discussion. Actually, within the ISIP, the International Students of Islamic Psychology, we're establishing an initiative called Hikmai. 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 So AI, we can call it.
Right.
So we have Brother Usama. I don't know if he's here. He usually joins our Futuwwah Study Circles, who will lead this together with some excellent brothers and sisters. So our idea with AI is to really utilize AI for the sake of service and khidmah and knowledge inquiry from an Islamic point of view. So I think as Muslims, we need to just try to utilize it for the sake of our deen and do it mindfully and according to Qur'an and Sunnah. Thank you, sister, for sharing your great remarks. Sister Hadid is writing in the chat, I heard once when the knowledge is hidden, it means there is something wrong or done in a closed way, since knowledge should be public and shared. Exactly. Exactly. Knowledge should be accessible. Exactly, sister. Exactly. So that's why this whole privatization of religion, which secularization brought as a part of its doctrines, is very problematic. Yes, Sister Zahira is writing, we are in a time of information overload. It's important to teach our children in general the etiquettes of respect to elders in every circumstance, teaching our children how important it is to take from our teachers and loving them, and the knowledge is leading back to loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what He has sent to us. MashaAllah, Sister Zahra. I really agree on that. I love our conversations, but I always look forward to the Sunday mornings. It's a great way to wake up, learning from all of you. Thank you, dear sisters and brothers. Yes, Sister Amina, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I think this week in particular has been an incredibly heavy week for, well, we all know why, those who caught the news. And I think there's a level of distrust with the youth because of, throughout our history, obviously, there would have been scandals and inappropriate behavior. I mean, don't get me wrong, like I have my bay'ah with my sheikh and I absolutely love the habaib and I am very much attached to the tradition. But I think in a time of, like so many people have mentioned already, so much shared information so loudly at such a speed, throughout our history, we wouldn't have had access to somebody misbehaving, for example, on the other side of the world. And so it wouldn't affect a person's trust in that sacred connection. So I think that affects things. And I think, especially for young men, I think as we reclaim Futuwwah, you know, as a sacred journey, both men and women, helping teach young men that there is safety and sacred masculinity in vulnerability with the right people to be able to grow the way we need to, is something that is learned through action. I think we may have, obviously, we're all on the journey together. And I think you know, the more they see that in us and the more they see us surrendering ourselves to our teachers, humility and vulnerability to grow, and they will follow.
Continue, Sister Amina. Continue, please.
Yeah, I was just finished, to be honest with you. I was just saying, you know, like the more they see us in as a lived example, as role model behavior, as we model the behavior we wish to see in them, then they will trust the process and they.
Yeah, mashallah, Sister Amina, thank you for your excellent remark. I really appreciate it. Yeah. I think that we need to just showcase the model exactly as you say. And part of Futuwwah is, as you say, that allowing men and males and young boys and males and men to be vulnerable. And vulnerability is to show respect to the elders, is to submit to their and show respect to them, have deference to them, have deference to them, pay homage to them, love them, venerate them. These are all ways of humbling yourself, but also to be vulnerable as a man and as a woman, obviously. But now, unfortunately, due to the different notions of masculinity, which is not according to Qur'an and Sunnah, we see a lot of males going into the path of being an alpha male instead, which is not the way that we should be. So definitely there is a connection there. And then to pay your, homage or, pay your alliance, or as you said, giving a bayah is a way to actually, show deference and also to humble yourself, accepting that you can learn from somebody else. And obviously it should be with the right teacher, with the right guide that is, rightfully guided and is righteous, So there is obviously different, different circumstances and how this should be, and there's different, standards and how a person that you are submitting yourself to in order to learn more, or to that you're following, or that you're giving your allegiance should have in their character as well as a sacred guide or whatever, So this is also important. So these things, following, loving, giving bayah, walking in the path, learning, showing deference, respect is all tools of humbling ourselves, and in that sense also show that we're all seekers of knowledge that can learn from others, as part of our wayfaring journey. Khair, thank you so much, Sister Amina. This is very important indeed. And we can also find things in the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the importance of these aspects, the importance of, respecting the scholars, respecting the teachers, pay your homage, pay your respect, pay your love, allegiances. These are all part of our tradition. This is part of the Sunnah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All right, brothers and sisters, let's move forward. Let's read next paragraph, inshallah. Who would like to read? All right, Sister Hadid, go ahead.
Where did you reach?
We are now, Sister, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger. Here.
Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His best messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned the praiseworthy status of the scholars. He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Azza wa Jal said in Surah Fatir, verse 35 of His servants, only the people of knowledge are truly in awe of Allah. Surely Allah is the Almighty, all forgiven all forgiven. In the 13th verse of Surah An-Nahl, Allah Azza wa Jal also stated, so ask the people of remembrance if you don't know. Elaborating on this, the Prophet ﷺ said, surely the scholars are the inheritance of the prophets. Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned in His noble book the spiritual requirements for the sincere fata to recognize the need for obtaining a guide and to then show deference to difference to this man of experiential knowledge and wisdom. The indication of this is pointed to regarding the story of Musa alayhi salam and his spiritual guide Al-Khadr alayhi salam, I think. Allah Azza wa Jal said in Surah Al-Kahf verses 65 and 66, there they found a servant of ours to whom we had granted mercy from us and taught with knowledge of our own. Musa said to him, may I follow you, provided that you teach me what you have been taught of right guidance.
You can continue, sister.
The difference which the Fata should have for scholars as well as one spiritual mentor or guide is a matter which he outward and inward aspects. Sayyid Abdul Salam al-Asmari said, you are obligated to have compartment with Allah, His Messenger, with your spiritual guides, and with all people, be the person pious or immoral. Compartment with spiritual guides is to protect their honor, have good conduct in serving them, and sincerity in loving them.
All right, sister. Thank you, sister. Thank you, Sister Hadid. Thank you for reading in such an excellent way. MashaAllah. So many gems in this part of our reading today, and dear brothers and sisters. So I would like to ask you guys to reflect upon the whole aspect of recognizing the needs for obtaining a guide and to show deference to them who have experiential knowledge and wisdom, for instance. What is experiential knowledge and wisdom? Could you guys reflect upon that? What do you think? Yes, Sister Amina, go ahead.
Yes, I think experiential knowledge is from I'm so sorry, but the ayah comes to mind again from Surah Takathur. It's the Haqqul Yaqeen. It's the belief. It's like Ilmul Yaqeen. You have knowledge of the truth or knowledge of belief, but then you experience it and you know the truth of it a level above the knowledge. Like, of course, it's there in the word itself, experiential, but then if you connect it to the ayah and if you go into the tafsir, then yes, it's Haqqul Yaqeen. That word, that phrase came to mind. Yes, just that.
Ilm al-yaqeen and haqq al-yaqeen. MashaAllah. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, sister. Any other reflections?
Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum salam. Yes, go ahead. Who was it?
For me, simply experiential knowledge and wisdom. I believe if you take a boy of, say, 10-year-old and a man of 50-year-old, given their number of years of existence, definitely a 50-year-old will be way more knowledgeable than a 10-year-old. But, you know, in rare exceptions, you have children that are very young, and probably maybe because they've been able to memorize the Quran, they have that kind of knowledge. But in terms of experience, he doesn't really have the real life experience, and we cannot say, okay, we need his wisdom in terms of living life and its realities. But a 50-year-old man, of course, aside from the knowledge he has, he's also built wisdom over the years based on his experience and his own knowledge, and would definitely qualify to be more knowledgeable than a 10-year-old.
MashaAllah, sister. Thank you for your great remarks. So it's about lived experience, isn't it? With time and with experiences in life, you marinate knowledge and you develop metacognition to be able to think about your thoughts, or meta-emotion to be able to feel your feelings before you act upon your feelings, to be able to think about your thoughts before you act upon your thoughts. It's something that comes with age, comes with lived experience, right? Maybe there's a reason why most of the prophets became prophets after the age of 40, for instance. There's something there, And in our tradition, we say that age of 40 and afterwards is the age of wisdom, isn't it? So what is wisdom? It is knowledge that has been embodied, and knowledge that has been marinated, that has been filtered, that has been heavily pondered about through both theoretical inquiry, but also practical application, and practical application through life, through trials and tribulations, allows us to perhaps nurture more or understand more the core element of the knowledge, for instance. So perhaps that is part of experiential knowledge and wisdom, And wisdom and knowledge are two different things that are sharing some parts. They have some core elements that are the same, but they're still different, because wisdom is a refined aspect of knowledge. Knowledge is something that we all can gain. Wisdom is something that is a refined aspect of knowledge. So when you refine knowledge, then wisdom comes. And wisdom obviously is something that I at least firmly believe is something that the core is knowledge, but with it comes also refinement of it, and also embodying the knowledge becomes wisdom in a sense. Yes, Sister Asfia, go ahead.
Yes, brother. So I think experiential knowledge is something an individual derives from his experience, which is also influenced by many of his emotions and thoughts. And a person gains it from different situations and environment by going through many things and using it in his particular matters of life. So and also I think it is also gained through the emotions and emotional intelligence. So I think it's very deep. It's very deeper, and and this is actually like directly which is applied in one's life. So and I think it is deeply rooted in individuals experience, making it more relatable. And but also, having said that, I think sometimes we need to also think that it's a kind of a personal perspective of a person or an individual. So there are many things related to it. And I think Islamically, when we think about experiential knowledge, it is the way you gain it through the self purification, the spiritual growth you get, and through the ihsan, that is excellence in worship. So both experiential knowledge and theoretical knowledge is what is a holistic understanding of the world.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Excellent, Sister Asfia. Thank you so much for your great feedback. Really appreciate it. Yes, indeed. I think that we need both, as you said. We need the theoretical knowledge, obviously. But then the experiential knowledge is the application of the theoretical knowledge to apply it in different contexts, for instance, as a way to further perhaps see the effect of the knowledge. So if the knowledge or the theoretical knowledge is the cause, then applying it, which is experiential knowledge, is the effect. And then you can see the causality or the correlation, for instance. And with that comes wisdom. So yeah, definitely. And as you said, also holistic way of understanding knowledge. And wisdom is a holistic embodiment of knowledge, because it comes with experience. Thank you, Sister Asfia. Brother Jamaluddin is writing in the chat, is being an alpha male necessarily antithetical to Futuwwah and what it enjoys? So Brother Jamaluddin, it depends on how we view alpha male and what we put into that particular notion. I would say the core of an alpha male is beautiful, but it needs to be refined, which is Futuwwah. All right. So the core of an alpha male is pure masculinity, which is beautiful. Nothing wrong. But it needs to be refined. That is Futuwwah. So pure masculinity, pure femininity are both Great. These are all things given by Allah to us. It's about refining it. So refining it is through our spiritual practices, is to, for instance, showing deference to our teachers or scholars or guides, or showing deference towards our parents and elders. All the chapters we're reading right now in this great book,
Agreed.
So that is how I view it, Brother Jamaluddin. Yes, go ahead, brother. You're here. Please unmute yourself and please share your thoughts.
No, I agree with what you're saying. I just wanted to kind of put that question to the group because unintentionally, I think it was almost conveyed as something that was negative, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative kind of description or label.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if you just act on being alpha male and you think that's masculinity, then that I would say would be problematic. Because then you're just acting and you say this is masculinity. And I'm just with my impulses. I am just with my urges. I am just with my emotions.
Without guidance.
Without guidance, without purification, without refinement, without doing the tahdib, then that will not be good.
So aligning the alpha maleness, for want of a better term, with one's Futuwwah.
Exactly. So the alpha male is it's a pure part of your fitra. I mean, I wouldn't call it alpha male then. Alpha male for me, and maybe I'm wrong, brother, so I would love, I'm always open to learn from all of you. We learn from one another. I would say alpha male, the way that I interpreted it, and I might interpret it wrong, Allahu alam, is when you're applying your fitri masculinity and you're applying it without refining it. That's alpha male. That is what I have interpreted, and I might be wrong, by the way. Manhood, sacred manhood, is that you're connecting yourself with your fitri masculinity, but you're also working on refining it so that it becomes sacred, and then you become a man. And this could be applied to femininity as well. One problem with modernity today, because of the liberal ideologies, is that we only speak about alpha male. We don't speak about alpha females. Femininity in its pure, it's amazing, right? But if it's not refined, it can also be toxic. So we should speak about femininity, right? So
I think the term alpha male, because it's almost a neutral concept, which can either be positive or negative, depending on the training or access to knowledge.
Okay, that's good to know. I mean, I appreciate your input here. And I might be wrong. I have viewed it. Well, you know what we need to always understand? Sometimes when we view things, we need to understand, where did I get this perception? Maybe I got this perception from the wrong source. So I need to be self-critical there. So I thank you for raising this. And maybe we shouldn't use alpha male as a...
It's not a criticism. I'm not criticizing
No, brother. Nasiha is the one part of Futuwwah, brother. We read a whole chapter about Nasiha. So I appreciate Nasiha, actually. I think sincere guidance and advice is very good. But yeah, the way that I have thought about it is that the application of masculinity without its refinement is to be alpha male. But if you refinement, that you take that pure masculinity, which is beautiful, and it becomes sacred manhood and Futuwwah. So Futuwwah is the process of refining, the way that we refine food or marinate food so it will become tasteful. That's the way that we marinate our fitri masculinity so it becomes sacred manhood. Allahu alam. But yes, the core of masculinity, which we can say is the pure maleness, if we want to use that word, which is also a core part of the alpha male type of application, is nothing wrong. It's beautiful, but it needs to be refined so that the application is not just pure, it's refined. Because pure aggression, I'm just going to give this as an example. Pure aggression, aggression is good. Okay, let's say anger is good. Anger is really good. But if it's just pure, if you just act upon it purely, it could create havoc, and that's not good, right? But if you take it, because anger is a fitri emotion that we have, Allah has given that to us, and we refine it, then it becomes part of the trait of the feta. And that makes you courageous, right? You become courageous. So a refined aspect of anger, which is something pure, which is beautiful because we need it, but we need to refine it to act upon it so that we don't create havoc. And how do we refine that? Refine that by aligning it to Qur'an and Sunnah. But we're not in Futuwwah disregarding fitrah at all. We don't want to change fitrah. We just refine things. That's part of our tahdib, of our akhlaq, right? So the problem with liberalism and the liberal ideologies, they want to change fitrah. They want to distort fitrah. They want to punish fitrah. They want to rewrite fitrah, which all these are just things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do, not the creation in itself, right? So I think, yes, you're correct that in certain ideologies, in the West in particular, certain secular liberal ideologies, for instance, there's nothing toxic masculinity. Masculinity is never toxic. It's the culture that brings the toxicity that is inflicting masculinity or femininity. It's not that masculinity or femininity is toxic. It's the culture that is toxic. The problem with liberal ideologies, they never want to change the culture because they're benefiting from it. They just want to change things that are not aligned to the benefits that they receive from a culture that is unfortunately very toxic. Allahu alam. Brother Jamaluddin, thank you so much for your great remarks. I really appreciate it. Sister Iman, go ahead. Barakallahu fikum, brother.
Assalamu alaikum. I just had a comment to make about, this conversation about toxic masculinity, alpha masculinity, and alpha femininity. So I hope it's not sort of taking the conversation away from where it needs to go. But I think, like, for me, the confusion about what constitutes, pure masculinity and pure femininity from an Islamic perspective, it comes from Islamic teachers themselves. And that primarily is sort of connected to the fact that there's so much sort of difference of opinion. Like, it doesn't really seem to be coming, my confusion doesn't seem to be coming from, what society says versus what, Islam is saying. It's more about what Muslims themselves tend to sort of say and claim, and comments and opinions that they've sort of taken from their so-called traditionally trained teachers that gives me a lot of confusion. Like there are some people that sort of say, oh yeah, my sort of teacher from, Yemen sort of said this, and and then they sort of show me a quote from this particular sort of scholar from, a traditionally trained place as this, and then it seems to be sort of very different to the teachers that I'm sort of directly connected to, who are also connected to a direct chain of transmission, Sheikh Abdul Jilani. So, like, I think for me, I'm just sort of finding myself in a bit of a world of confusion. And then you have, like, for example, as well, at the same time, particular sort of models of what apparently traditional femininity actually sort of looks like from an Islamic perspective, and it seems to be empowering and liberating and all that sort of stuff. And then you've got, in the same breath, teachers that are traditionally trained that might have a difference of opinion, that are pushing a very sort of hyper sort of shy, modest, kind of sort of timid way of being. And it's like, okay. And then you get into conversations with these people and you find yourself sort of conflicted. My teacher said this, your teacher is saying this, they're all traditionally trained. It's like, can it just be a matter of, well, that's what your teacher is saying. Perhaps there are multiplicity of opinions that are correct. You can go with that opinion, and I'm just going to go with this particular perspective. Like, how do these differences of perspective actually exist in harmony together?
This is for your reflections. I appreciate it. And yeah, that's why we have the study circle, to learn from each other. I think as long as it doesn't contradict Qur'an and Sunnah, then multiplicity could exist in harmony with one another. I think Qur'an and Sunnah will be the benchmark. And in that, harmony comes if it doesn't contradict. If it's aligned, then that's perfectly fine. We get inputs from different teachers, and people might have been taught in different places or spaces. And as long as it doesn't contradict, then by all means, that's why that's why this chapter is so important, to have deference to your guide, to your teacher, because ultimately we learn from them. But then if you have multiple teachers, and they are saying different things that doesn't contradict to Qur'an and Sunnah, Allahu Alam, that is also something that is worth reflecting upon. From the aspect of Futuwwah, which is what we are speaking about in this study circles, I think this book is foundational work. So I trust Imam Dawud Walid. He is my teacher personally. I love him for the sake of Allah. He's an amazing, amazing scholar. He has worked and dedicated his life in reviving the notion of Futuwwah into our contemporary era. And he has studied with some of the great scholars of our time, that comes from, spaces and places where there is sacred transmission of knowledge. So this book is a trustworthy source. And with regards to different notions of masculinity, I think I haven't crossed that personally when it comes to at least the sacred spaces, but ultimately we all choose which places and spaces we inquire our knowledge, right? So yes, even amongst Muslims there is multiplexity, and sometimes they contradict one another. But if it doesn't contradict Quran and Sunnah, then the multiplexity is beautiful. Now, if it contradicts Quran and Sunnah, then that's problematic. And that's something that we need to be mindful of. That's why the spiritual guide is so important, because he will guide you. He will guide you. And these type of positioning when we feel confusion, I think that's a perfect place and space to ask our spiritual guides for guidance, for instance, or our teachers, Further, just another reflection that came to my mind with regards to what you said, sister. I think I appreciate you really opening up this, and your own, path, which is, very important. I appreciate that, Sister Iman. And this is a space for all of us to ask these questions out loud or reflect upon these things out loud. Sometimes, I don't know, there is a quote saying, the more the merrier. Well, I wonder if that's the truth always. Maybe it's not the more the merrier always. Maybe we should choose a couple of teachers that are aligned and study with them. Allahu Alam. I'm not saying that that's the solution, by the way. And I personally do not always follow that, to be quite honest. But it just came to my mind while you were reflecting that maybe sometimes the more is not the merrier. Because we have so much access to knowledge today, and knowledge is so accessible, we can just easily study all over the world and all over the place. And that's beautiful, by the way. That's nothing to at all criticize, but I'm wondering if the more the merrier is always the better, So yeah, and there will always be ikhtilaf. Part of Futuwwah is adab al-ikhtilaf. How can we respect ikhtilaf without, attacking one another or doing character assassination towards one another or doing takfir towards one another? You see what I'm saying? That is part of Futuwwah. It's to stand up as a sacred man and as a sacred woman. And from the aspect of masculinity as a sacred man, to be a amir, what is it? To be a custodian, to be first in and last out, to be a servant, and to show what is it to be a sacred man, according to all the studies we're doing. But I'm also thinking that it could be a multiplicity there where we can also enjoy adab al-ikhtilaf, that it is okay to have multiple views in certain areas of, for instance, even applying and adhering to Futuwwah. Allahu Akbar. Thank you, Sister Iman. Sister Amina. Yeah, go ahead, Sister Iman. You want to add something more?
I liked your perspective about the more the merrier, and like personally for myself, for the past 10 years, I've always gone with the position of just choosing a select few scholars and just sticking with them. Yeah. I think that the confusion for me has come from increased interaction with a diverse range of people who are sort of coming with different sort of perspectives, like as in people, as in students of knowledge. Whereas I personally sort of like the concept of just sticking with a few select teachers and adhering to their teachings. Yeah.
Awesome. And I think that here's where multiplexity or multiplicity comes. If that works for you, Sister Iman, that's amazing, and I'm so glad for you, mashallah. Maybe for some others, they love to study in different places and spaces, and that works for them, that's beautiful for them as well. I think we can do both. I was just reflecting upon it. It just came to my mind, to be quite honest. I haven't reflected upon it. Is more the merrier always? That is a question. It is also connected to what Sister Sophia mentioned about, digitalization, access of knowledge, AI, and all these things. So it's about it's also about our innate disposition. We all have uniqueness in our fitrah. And your humor, your temperament might be different than mine or somebody else, right? So we need to, for instance, in Unani Tib, in the Islamicized Greek medicine, there is a whole theory of eating according to your humor and your temperament. So, for instance, if your humor or your temperament is, sanguine, I don't know, like I'm not an expert in Unani Tib, then you might not eat, let's say, things that are hot. I'm just saying that. I don't know. That's not exactly the theory. I know that within the theory, for instance, Unani Tib says that you should eat according to products that are harvested and produced in your context, in your country, in your region, because it's more aligned to your humor and your temperament. So when it comes to knowledge inquiry, we could reflect upon that. That maybe if my temperament and humor is different, maybe I will have an approach. I think the benchmark is that it doesn't contradict Qur'an and Sunnah, and that it comes from knowledge, from scholars that are trained according to the sacred transmission of knowledge, or that they have like an ijaza from an institute that is, respected by everybody, whether it's, it could be in Egypt, it could be in Syria, it could be in Yemen, it could be in Saudi, it could be in Malaysia, it could be in Indonesia, it could be in Pakistan, whatever. And this is, and if a person has ijaza, then you know that this person is trained, So then you choose according to your interest areas, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan.
I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I just have to sort of say that I like that point because, you can sort of extend it to this idea of, taking knowledge from people that suit your cultural needs.
Yes.
Like as an Australian Muslim, for example, or as a Muslim growing up in the West, I've got very specific cultural needs. And it's not just, the cultural needs of a woman from Sydney. It's kind of like there's a subculture in Sydney and a group of women there that I connect with the most. So it's like, taking knowledge that sort of suits the cultural needs of that specific subculture of women from Sydney, for example. So I think that I really connect with that. Yeah.
Thank you, Imam, for sharing your reflections. We learned so much by that as well. And yes, I mean, it just came to my mind. One of my teachers said that you should never, as a faqih, for instance, you don't give a verdict to a person from another culture. You will then tell them, go to a sacred scholar or a faqih in your culture, because the cultures might be different. Not that they are not both, jurists. And maybe they both could be Hanafi jurists or Maliki jurists or Hanbali jurists or Shafi'i jurists, but that the approach should be to take advice from somebody from your culture. I remember this very vividly, and this is a position that I think is crucial for us to reflect upon, because it's also about urf, as you were mentioning, and culture. And we as Muslims, we're not against urf. There's a whole way of approaching urf and culture. It's about aligning it. But then the way that culture is aligned to Qur'an and Sunnah is different in Australia compared to, let's say, Nigeria, right? So it's to be mindful of that and to also reflect upon culture congruency. You're, for instance, Sister Man, you're a third culture kid, I suppose, right? I don't know your ethnical background, but I am a third culture kid. I live in Sweden, but I'm ethnically Persian, Arab, and Turk. So I'm a third, but I'm Sunni. So what unites us is that we're both Sunni Muslims, and then we might be third culture kids having the same experience in Australia and Sweden. So maybe we can sometimes relate to same sources, but for somebody who is not a third culture kid, who comes from a majority Muslim country and was a Muslim, let's say somebody raised in Egypt, or let's say somebody raised in Pakistan or Nigeria or Gambia, which are majority Muslim, maybe their experience are different, So it's a very much here we can also speak about acculturation. We can speak about the notion of third culture kids or beings, and I love that. There is a great scholar. He's not a Muslim, but he's an interesting scholar in the sense that we can learn. He's a decolonial scholar. His name is Homi Bhabha. He's an Indian scholar. He speaks about the hybrid identity as a resistance towards colonial hegemony. It's very interesting. So the hybrid identity is an identity that has been created by the mix of different cultures, and it becomes an antidote towards hegemony of the colonial oppresses. Now, from a Muslim perspective, this hybrid identity is beautiful if it's aligned with Qur'an and Sunnah. That's the only thing. It needs to be aligned to Qur'an and Sunnah. So, for instance, a lot of Islamic arts is hybrid cultural creations. There is nothing such as Islamic art that is one. The only oneness is that the art should connect you to Allah. It should remind you of Allah. But besides that, it's a multiplicity there, or multiplexity, right? And that's the hybridity of Islamic culture, but it's always aligned with Quran and Sunnah. So Islamic architecture, for instance, in Iran is much more different than, let's say, in Morocco, or the Islamic architecture in Uzbekistan is much more different than, let's say, Indonesia, right? So that is also something that we can reflect upon, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan, sister. It was a great reflection. I learned a lot. Jazakallah khairan. Let's see here. In the chat, we have a lot of great things here. Sister Asfia is writing about is an excellent quote. Brother Jamaluddin, masculinity or femininity is not toxic, but it's the culture which makes it both toxic. Exactly. Afflicting on that. Sister Noor is writing, having spiritual guide is really important in this end and time, as we can get swayed with our own interpretation of religious text. For this chapter, the issues resonate a lot with us understanding the 4 integrals of religion. The first 3 is Iman, Islam, and Ihsan, that has been explored by our Sheikh Habib Abu Bakr al-Adni. I find clarity in understanding human behavior and problems from the changes that happen through the Zaman from this discovery of knowledge. MashaAllah, Sister Noor, thank you so much for sharing your great remarks. Brother Jamaluddin is writing, the multiplicity could be explained by differences in culture perspectives and ikhtilaf, of course. Yes, exactly, Brother Jamaluddin. Thank you for those excellent remarks. Sister Hadid is writing, the master host, Sayyid al-Bayt, the home is the servant of the people he is hosting. Yes, exactly. MashaAllah, beautiful. Sister Anum is writing, there was a few times when the Sahaba differed in how they interpreted the Prophet ﷺ's instructions. Differences when he was alive amongst them. When both sides reached him, he rebuked neither. Exactly. There's a lot of these encountering that we can learn from. Indeed, sister. Thank you for sharing. Culture context is very important, Brother Jamaluddin. Yes, exactly. Sister Asfia is writing, for me, masculinity is a man protecting his religion, his authentic knowledge, and giving the right dawah out there and not tolerating unethical things and try to fix them in the most humble way possible, or even putting on the armor if required. But at the same time, he can also be the small kid at home who loves to play with his children and be a friend to his wife, and very, very humble and submissive to his parents, creating a breathable environment at home in accordance with Quran. So, mashallah, Sister Asfia. That's beautiful. May Allah allow all of us to become sacred men and sacred women, inshallah. That's amazing. That's amazing. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All right, brothers and sisters, amazing. Let's continue reading a little bit. We still have about 20 minutes left. Really enjoyed our conversations. Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much. So let's read from Among the Outward Aspects. Anybody who would like to read? All right, Sister Asfia, go ahead.
Among the outward aspects, there are varying ways of honoring scholars and one's guide. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ stated, "He is not of us who does not show mercy to the young and honor the elderly." The word elderly can carry the meaning of one who is senior in knowledge, not just one who is an elder in age. Just as the fatah is not to raise his voice at his parents, he should likewise not raise his voice at his spiritual mentor or guide. Just as one should not walk before their father unless given permission or for a specific reason, such as to aid him or guard him against potential harm. Sayyid Abd al-Qadir al-Jilani stated that one should not walk in front of their spiritual guide. Sayyidina al-Jilani also mentioned that one of the acts of humility to be shown to one's guide is to avoid turning one's physical back or backside to him. Also, when one's guide comes to an area in which the fatah is seated, he should stand up out of respect, as the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam told the men of Banu Khurayza to stand for Sa'id ibn Mu'ad raziyallahu ta'ala anhu, saying, "Stand up for your master." Likewise, the fatah should not sit before their spiritual mentor or guide until he sits, unless given permission to do so. Sayyid al-Jilani further mentioned that the fatah should not enter into a gathering or room in which one's guide is present without receiving permission. After sitting in his company while he is instructing or speaking, the fatah should not talk to anyone except to warn people of danger or to mitigate physical harm out of necessity. He should not preemptively answer a question directed to a scholar, a spiritual guide, nor should anyone argue or debate in his gatherings, whether he is present or excuses himself. The fatah should not joke around or laugh loudly in his guide's gatherings. Rather, he should listen and be silent unless he is asked a question by the scholar or guide, or is asked by the scholar to address the gathering from his generosity. One of the outward.
Thank you so much. Great reading, mashallah. May Allah bless you. Wow, so many great things here. So many great gems. I wish we had more hours to spend together, brothers and sisters, to learn. SubhanAllah, it's amazing. Here, there's a lot of gems, right? So, for instance, the way that we show respect to our teachers, not walking in front of them and not debating in front of them and not joking around them and sit down, be silent and listen and to listen to their instructions, getting guidance by also asking for their permission. Why is this important? And how could we learn ourselves and also to teach to the youth? Why is this important? Would anybody like to reflect? Your sisters and brothers? Yes, Sister Amna, go ahead.
It's a bit like I mentioned before, it's a lesson in deep humility.
Yes.
And I think when our young see us as fully grown adults as they perceive us to be, behaving in a humble way to either people senior in knowledge or senior in years to us, they literally want to follow that. They want to follow that because they want to be part of what comes of that from the unseen, because they can experience that just from sitting and listening. And I think one of the things that spoke loudest to me in this particular section was how we, as an ummah, we listen to respond almost all the time instead of listening to understand. And there's a serious reiteration on just sit and listen to understand. We don't have to listen to respond. We don't have to always have something to say to feel seen, heard, and understood, because sometimes the transformation that we're seeking is a silent one.
Yeah, mashallah, mashallah. Thank you so much, Sister Amina, for sharing. Appreciate it. SubhanAllah. I'm reading in the chat. Khatam is right. In the week's chapter is about respecting scholars and guides. I am reflecting how coincidentally there has been unfortunate news about abuse by a Quranic teacher in the US. May we be protected from such fitna. Ameen. Yes, subhanAllah, subhanAllah, subhanAllah. Yeah. Unfortunately, there are people that are, doing fitna, utilizing their positions. This is really horrible, horrible news. May Allah protect all of us and protect our, all the youths from this type of fitna. SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah. And I think that that's why it's so important when we, speak about respecting your teachers. It's about sacred people, right? People that have been in the sacred path for generations or have been passed this path from their predecessors, So yeah, thank you for sharing this, Khatam. SubhanAllah. It's really sad to see these things in the Ummah. Why Sister Anum is writing, why is this important? Because in the path of Allah, you respect the symbols of Allah, for example, everyone and everything that helps you to get to your final destination. Yes, exactly. Also, adab is very important, isn't it, brothers and sisters? I think that adab is a way for us to refine our character, you know? And it's also, I guess, a way to understand the sacredness in certain positions. There's a sacredness in being a father or a mother. That's why the children show respect to the father and mother, right? There is a sacredness of being an elderly. There is a sacredness of being a scholar that is, trained properly. There is a sacredness in showing love, to the awliya and to the anbiya, isn't it? So I think with modernity came, as we have mentioned many times, anthropocentrism, which essentially brought sacredness only to man or woman. It's like something individual. I am sacred. And in a sense, we're all sacred in the sense that we're all a creation of Allah, and we should take care of our vessel, which is sacred because it's given to us by Allah. But the sacredness in certain roles has been dismantled because of these anthropocentric ways. But obviously it exists. I mean, if you look at the secular state systems, they put sacredness in the king, or they put sacredness in the president or the prime minister. So even in the secular realm, you see sacredness in certain roles. We just have a different ontological understanding of what sacredness is. So we should definitely reinstall that always, and bring that to us. Brothers and sisters, we have about 10 minutes left. Let's read the rest of the chapter, and then we can discuss the final parts. Who would like to read? Sister Sophia is writing, these values were slowly eroded in the modern life. Yes, Sister Shabina is writing, Salam alaikum, respecting they teach us a lot, so many things and words that they speak, and you reflect with yourself. Yes, exactly. All right, who would like to read the final part? Anybody who would like to read? All right, I can read, inshallah. I'll read. One of the outward displays of showing respect for scholars and one's guide is to kiss their foreheads and hands. Naturally, this only applies to male scholars, and it is completely improper for the fatah to kiss the hands of female scholars. It is narrated that when Ja'far ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu returned from Abyssinia, he kissed the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on his forehead. On another occasion, when Anas was asked, "Did you touch the Prophet ﷺ with your hand?" he replied, "Yes, I kissed his hand." The Prophet ﷺ also reportedly stated, "It is not permitted for anyone to kiss another hand after myself, except for man from the people of my household and the hand of a scholar." Al-Suhrawardi stated, "For the people of Islamic spirituality, kissing the hand of their guide after seeking forgiveness is a foundation of the Sunnah. In gatherings of students of knowledge, I have witnessed them kissing their teacher's hand. For instance, after one-on-one gatherings in which I read a text with our Sheikh Lu al-Maliki, may Allah preserve him, from Touba, Senegal, I kissed his hand. He kissed mine in return, and then I kissed his hand again. Among the inward aspects of deference towards scholars and one's spiritual mentor is loving them and having sincerity in all actions towards them. The fatah should pray that they are preserved and guarded from harm. Any service done for them should be for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, which includes both the good deeds they may be aware of, as well as good deeds done for them with their knowledge. Sayyid Abdul Qadir al-Jilani mentioned that there is no exhibiting beautiful comportment with scholars without doing service for them. Finally, the fatah should always also not wish ill upon his teachers, nor should he ever wish for any favor of Allah to be stripped from them. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We finalize our reading of this chapter today. Here, there's something very interesting, brothers and sisters. Kissing somebody's hand, kissing your teacher's hand. And the Prophet ﷺ, he says here, right? It is not permitted for anyone to kiss another hand after myself, except for man from the people of my household, Ahl al-Bayt, or the hand of a scholar. Why did the Prophet ﷺ say this, first and foremost? What do you guys think? And why is it something that could be beautiful to do? Obviously, as a man towards a man, and as a sister towards a sister, or a woman scholar, for instance. Any reflections? Sister Zahira is writing in the chat, martial art has been part of my life, and the parallels with our deen when it comes to respect and etiquettes are so similar, subhanAllah, from the way you sit in front, to the way you speak, to not eating in front or before them, to getting up when they enter, and more. I don't think anything is too late in teaching, but up to us parents to try our best to incorporate and teach as much as we can to the youth. Yes, Sister Zahra, martial arts is amazing. Even like the martial arts from other traditions are really interesting. There's so much honor in it. It's so much etiquettes in it that is very sacred. Like, for instance, the etiquettes of the ninjas, the Japanese ninjas, or the etiquettes of those that are practicing Aikido. We have our beloved brother and master of Aikido, Hakim Sensei. He's also a Futuwwah practitioner who is utilizing Aikido to bring people to Futuwwah. It's amazing, So yes, a lot of this sacred martial arts has so much things that is very much congruent with Futuwwah. Thank you, Sister Zahira. And we should allow our youths to practice it with good teachers. And that is part of Futuwwah. That's one of the elements of Futuwwah, one of the elements. We have, for instance, Brother Ridwan from Malaysia, mashallah. He's a sacred grappler, doing an amazing work with his foundation, Pahlawan. We have Hakim Sensei from Indonesia doing an amazing work with Aikido. We have Ustad Jihad from UK who is doing sacred archery, So alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, there's a lot of great people in this space. Going back to kissing the hand, any thoughts? Yes, Sister Iman, go ahead.
I remember Dr. Ahmad saying that when you kiss the hand of your sheikh, or your teacher, your scholar, then the teacher metaphysically and spiritually kisses your feet, right? And so I think that's sort of a really interesting and a beautiful thing that Dr. Ahmad said. And he said that applies to, and when I think he said more or less that when you sort of respect him in that particular sort of way, then he's metaphysically or spiritually sort of kissing your feet, whether you're a man or a woman. But I thought that was a very beautiful thing. Maybe I shouldn't have shared that, now that I'm thinking about it as I'm saying it out. But yeah, I just connected with that. Yeah.
Of course you can share. Dr. Omar is one of the great scholars of our tradition. May Allah preserve him. We love Dr. Omar. He's an amazing, amazing scholar. So yeah, share from all of your teachers, brothers and sisters. Share from all of your teachers. We want to learn. The Futuwwah Study Circle, I hope you guys like the methodology. It's about learning from one another, asking questions, and reading together, doing text reflection. So this is a study circle where we learn from one another. There is a saying, I'm an old hip hop artist. I left it when I started to practice Islam more thoroughly. But there is something I always loved with the cipher, where we used to freestyle with one another, improvising. And we used to say, each one teach one. Everybody could teach one another. Now, we need to bring the sanad there and the silsila. So we are all learning from each other because we all are studying with our teachers. So ultimately, the source of knowledge here is the amazing book of Imam Dawud Walid, which I recommend you guys to share all over the world, because this is one of the foundational works in Futuwwah in our contemporary era. And we're very happy that Imam Dawud Walid is with us and giving his blessings. So thank you for sharing. Please share from your teachers more insights. Yes, Sister Amina, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share that myself and my husband, Jamaluddin, who's also on this call, we're
MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah. And we, when we were living in the UK, we're actually with you from Medina Al Munawwara. This is where we are at the moment, alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
And when we were in the UK, we used to host a lot of events for converts, and it was especially important to me that the mothers of converts felt very special when we would have gatherings, and that they felt invited, and that, you know, anytime we hosted an event, that it was about them and they were included. And so I have been known to kiss their hands when I greet them as well, as a mark of like excellent adab with them, to say, this is your space as well, you know, we're here for you as well. And I think kissing hands, and they do it a lot, obviously, mashallah, in the Turkish culture, and that's where I think I first saw it there. And also they're not showing your back, you know, to the people of respect. And I remember thinking, what a beautiful cultural convention that is. Yeah. And I only learned today that those two things actually came from the tradition, subhanallah. I thought they were just really beautiful Turkish cultural conventions, if you like. And I thought, what a wonderful thing to adopt, to make people feel special and stand out from the crowd as, you know, walking khalifas, if you like. And awesome. So Astaghfirullah, I've just read this now with you guys, and I'm thinking maybe I need to do Tawbah because of what I was trying to do as a good thing. But, you know, with the mothers of converts. But for me, it was about being an example of excellent adab to them as believing people, you know, and trying to, well, we kind of feel like we have to humanize ourselves to an extent with all like the negative media about us, right? And so we work extra specially hard, don't we?
Showing love to Abdullah.
Yeah. Sorry. Jamal, what did you want to say?
I was just saying that I've kind of adopted the kissing of the hands, not just obviously to our teachers, but as a show, an outward show of respect and love to my youngest son. We kiss each other's hands out of respect. So it's interesting to hear the quote that one shouldn't do it apart from with teachers. So we almost adopted the kind of outward Turkish culture in that respect to show deference and respect within the family as well.
MashaAllah. I'm so glad to have you as couples here. MashaAllah. And please, brothers and sisters, bring your spouses to the sessions, to the circles. You do it. As a sister, bring your husband if you're married. As a brother, bring your wife if you're married. Because we learn together. Because Futuwwah is for couples as well. I'm developing a Futuwwah couples therapeutic model because I do a lot of marriage counseling. And by the way, send salams to the Prophet from us, Brother Jamaluddin and Sister Amina, inshallah. What a blessing to be here, having you guys being so close to the Prophet. Beautiful, beautiful. And you see, obviously we should never go against Qur'an and Sunnah, but culturally, culture that doesn't contradict, you know, people do. Now, I'm not going to say anything about that, but I also culturally, so I am from the Persian culture sphere. We do kiss the hands of our fathers, and I think that's also permissible to do. By the way, I will look through that. But it's beautiful that you guys have this tradition of kissing, you know, your children.
Something now that it's been highlighted, it's something that I will ask our teachers when they.
We'll ask our teachers. Inshallah, I agree. Because I heard another of this iteration of this, kissing the hands of your father is included in that as well. That's another iteration that I heard. Allah, let's ask our teachers and we will come back. But it's a beautiful aspect. As you guys say, it's out of respect, right? And another thing that you guys said, which I really appreciated, was the aspect of converts and how to introduce them to Islam. This is really important. We need to really work on that and support our beloved convert brothers and sisters. But yes, let's ask our teachers about this kissing of hand, and so that, you know, we don't do anything that contradicts Qur'an and Sunnah, obviously. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for sharing the way that you guys are parenting your children. May Allah bless both of you. We need pious children, and it's beautiful to see that interaction that you mentioned, Brother Jamaluddin, and also Sister Amina. May Allah preserve both of you and your children, inshallah. All right, Sister Sophia, you wanted to share something.
I just wanted to congratulate and just I felt really happy when I heard Sister Amina and Jamaluddin saying that they introduced this idea of kissing hand of an elderly person or the convert, which I think is great. I think I'm just very happy to hear that. Just wanted to.
I love it as well.
Wonderful. It is wonderful that it shouldn't be just confined to the scholars, but the elderly person in the household, because it creates an aura of respect and a hierarchy, very subtle. It shows love and affection and a lot of respect for young and old. I think it's beautiful practice, which I think we need to revive, actually, because it was there and it's got lost in the last few decades. I think it needs to be revived again. And mashallah, it's so good to hear that they're doing this.
I agree. I love it. I love it. I love it. And it's very congruent with a lot of cultural practice. And then, of course, it comes from our tradition and comes from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. But the whole aspect we see now, a lot of people are writing in the chat. Sister Zahira is writing, we try to maintain this culture with our kids, mashallah. Sister Arinola is writing, Jazakallah khairan. Sister Khatam is writing, in Malay culture, we kiss the hands of our mahram elders. Mashallah, beautiful. Malay culture is beautiful. I was in Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore this summer. I loved it. So much sacredness in the culture in that region. Beautiful. All right, brothers and sisters, I want to thank you all for joining us today. Next week, inshallah, brothers and sisters, we will read the chapter about generosity. It's only 3 pages, page 85 to page 87. And we'll meet the same time at 8:30 a.m. GMT, which is 8:30 a.m. UK time. So 8:30 a.m. GMT. I want to thank Sister Fatima, Brother Shoaib, and Sister Dania and Sister Medea for always helping with all the back ends of our Futuwwah Study Circles. May Allah bless you all for your amazing work. Sister Fatima, Brother Shoaib, Sister Dania, Sister Mediha. And I want to thank you all for your great reflections and remarks today, dear brothers and sisters. I learned so much by listening to all of you. May Allah bless all of our teachers. May Allah bless all of our shuyukh, all of the murabbis, all of our guides, all of our mentors, all of our teachers. They are so important for us in our spiritual rectification and also in our knowledge inquiry process. And they're the inheritors of the prophets, as the Prophet ﷺ said. So they're keeping that chain and the connection between us and the sacred knowledge that came from the Prophet ﷺ live, fresh, and well, inshallah. May Allah preserve all of them, inshallah. With that said, we'll see each other next week, dear brothers and sisters. Take care of yourself. An honor to be with you all, and please forgive me for any shortcomings from my side. If I said anything wrong or did anything wrong, rest assured that all the mistakes are solid in mind. If anything good came, it's from Allah, and all the mistakes are solid in mind. Take care of yourself, dear sister. Sister Fatima, Brother Shoaib, Sister Asiya, Sister Amina, Sister Anum, Sister Arinola, Sister Asfiya, Dr. Kasi, Sister Iman, Brother Jamaluddin, Sister Khatam, Sister Noor, Sister Ruqayya, Brother Salim, Sister Shabina, Sister Sophia, Sister Zahira, and Sister Zubayda. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.